Hi there, Miss Vidali here, and I'm here to talk to you about Chapter 1 of To Kill a Mockingbird, Everything You Need to Know. I taught this novel for 10 years, and I've probably read it several dozen times over the years. And so I thought, whether you're a student or a teacher, I could help you understand it because it is a complex book with lots of great themes and universal and classic ideas, and I just love the book so much. So here we go, everything you need to know about Chapter 1. Chapter 1 starts off with Scout, the main character. She's 6 years old, and she lives in a small town called Macomb in Alabama during the Great Depression, and she starts off by talking about her brother Jim. Obviously, she looks up to Jim, and she says that it all started when Jim was 13 and she was 6, and he broke his elbow. He wanted to play football, and then he realized that that was not going to be in the cards for him. And so she went back to try to figure out where everything went wrong in the story. And she says that she maintained that the Ewells started it all. And the Ewells are a family in the town of Macomb that are not your favorite family or very nice people in town, usually the ones that you would consider white trash. And so she goes back and she blames it on them. And then she said maybe it was when Dill came to us and they tried to get Boo Radley to come out. And Boo Radley is an outcast in the town. And they are very curious about this man who is in his house and doesn't show his face very often, which we will discuss a little bit more later. But if she really wants to get to the bottom line and where it all started, she says it started with Andrew Jackson. Andrew Jackson is a general in the Civil War, and he is a big part of their history. And so she goes into the history of Macomb and Alabama and the Civil War and how it all began, and how their cousin, Simon Finch, because their last name is Finch, came up the creek. And really that's where it all began and where all of the racism started and all of the things like that. So there's a lot of arguing between these generals and these people in the town about religion and many other issues, obviously race and racism being one of them. So Scout goes on, she explains kind of the history of the town and what she thinks about it. And she basically said, it was the Great Depression, which maybe she didn't know as a 6-year-old then that that's what it was called. But she said people moved slowly then. She said they were in no hurry. There was nowhere to go, nothing to buy, no money. No one had any money. But it was definitely a time of vague optimism. And that's kind of ominous, right? Optimism is good. Vague is not great. But basically, Macomb was on the edge of a turning point and things were about to change. And so she got to see those through her eyes as a child. And she talks about it. She said, it's a very famous quote, Macomb County had been recently told that it had nothing to fear but fear itself. So what is that? The fear of change, the fear of, letting all of their racist thoughts and things that they were taught from generations before go and open their minds and things to new things. I think that's what it means. But anyway, she goes on to introduce their cook Calpurnia because their mom died when they were very little. And so Atticus is a lawyer and that's their father, and they call him Atticus instead of dad. And I think that that is a respect thing in the South. And so he's a very prominent figure in the community, being a lawyer, and they can afford to have a cook, which is unreal in this time period because this is the Great Depression and everyone's struggling to find basic needs like food and water and shelter. So Calpurnia is the mother figure, and her and Scout don't really get along at the beginning of the book. But Jim kind of gets along with her more. So Jim is a little more mature, and I think that Scout, even as a young kid, understands that her brother can see things differently than her. So she goes on and talks about that was the summer that they met Dill, and he came to them. He was in their neighbor Miss Rachel's yard, and he was visiting his aunt for the summer. And so now they have a friend to play with, and they spend the summer dressing up and enacting these plays, and that was their entertainment because obviously there was no TV or internet or anything like that. They had books and make-believe plays that they put on for themselves. So they would do things like put on a play of Dracula, and eventually they decide to put on a play of Boo Radley. Boo Radley is a neighborhood legend, and his real name is Arthur Radley, and legend goes that he went crazy and he stabbed his dad in the leg with some scissors. And so they locked him up in the house, and he's like a prisoner of his own house because they never see him, and his dad walks around with a paper bag all the time and is always having drinks, and he's very private and keeps to himself, and he's known as a Baptist, a foot washing Baptist actually. And they really keep to themselves, which is kind of weird in Make Home, because Make Home, everybody knows everybody talks to everybody, there's not a lot to do, nobody has any money, so this is very strange behavior. So the kids become very curious about Boo Radley, and they get the great idea to try to make him come out. So they start a play, and they start acting out this legend story that he stabbed his dad in the legs with scissors, and he was carted off somewhere to a mental institution, and then locked up in his house for the remainder of his time, and they think he's still in there. So they decide to kind of reenact all that because it's kind of fun and interesting, and they're kids. And the chapter ends with them trying to make him come out and get a look at him. Dill and Scout dare Jim to go up and touch the house. And he said, just touch the house, that's all? And he's trying to act all cool and tough like he's not scared. And they said, yeah, that's all you have to do. Go on. And so he goes up there and he touches the house, and they see an invisible movement, like a flicker of somebody behind the curtain. And that's where the chapter leaves you hanging for wanting more.